Thank you. Good morning. I flew here from Los Angeles, California, with one set of ideas that I was going to speak on. And last night at this wonderful casual dinner, I changed my speech to another idea. And listening to the eminent speakers on the podium, I'm going to change it again for lots of reasons. First of all, how many of you here are either owners or upper management of exporting firms? Could you raise your hands? Thank you. How many here are students that want to go into the apparel business? Quite a few. Well, look at your future employees and start negotiating now. The key to our business, in the apparel business and also others, are only 4 items. And these 4 items, the accountants, the lawyers, the operating people, everything that I'm going to tell you in these 4 items goes on an expense sheet and nothing else matters. Number 1 is sales. Don't have sales, you don't have a business. Part of the sales, or to create those sales, is marketing. That's where India has fallen down. Doesn't mean they can't forge ahead, but the way they were doing business, when China has its problems and still does, when they closed down 10,000 factories in 30 days and moved the primary factories, over 1 million workers, from the ocean ports inland to people who have never seen a sewing machine in their life, they're still doing well. It was brought up that China still has a foothold or the eminence of being the largest exporter of apparel. Well, I entered China in 1974 with President Richard Nixon. And the key was make samples, because that's how they sell merchandise in the United States. And the first shops that opened up in China did nothing but make samples for the importers or retailers who were the potential buyers. That allowed the buyer or the manufacturer to be able to take an import, go show it, have it delivered, and make it well. So that's the key, sales, marketing. Number 2, we were talking a little bit about education. Merchandising, design, and engineering. Now at FID, I'm the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandise, which I've been teaching for 15 years. I call that La-La Land. But La-La Land is the only area that you cannot put on a sheet, because you may make 100 SKUs, 100 samples, and you go to the buyer, and the buyer looks at it and says, oh, that's wonderful, but change the pocket over to this side, it becomes another one, and all 500 samples that you made went to waste. So merchandising and design, and if you are in the bathing suit business for women, if you're in the bra business, lingerie, you better have an engineer on presence, is the key to forging newness. Now, true, in an economy that we've been all going through at different stages, people sometimes just, they want the fashion, they can't afford the fashion, they buy basics. But as far as I know, our population in the world is growing, men and women are having children, and so the apparel business is always on the increase, not on the decrease. So merchandising, design, and engineering is the key to bring forward new ideas. Third is production. Where are we going to have it made so that we could have on-time delivery, the quality of specifications that was ordered at a competitive price? Now, the competitive price doesn't mean the lowest price. Competitive price means that you are going to give the services necessary in order so the buyer does not have to make a change. True, the buyer, whether you're dealing with a retailer or with an agent or with a broker or with a manufacturer who uses your garments to sell to retailers. They all have their gross margins. They all have their idea of what's going on. They also, if they're legitimate, they know that if oil prices go up, if cost of labor, like in China, went up 30% in one day, prices are going to go up. I mean, it's so, but they don't want to raise their prices. So we as manufacturers or importers have to learn what areas can we change to lower our costs to maintain our gross margins and maintain our employees. It's very easy to say, I don't have the work, so I'm going to lay off my people who are quality trained people. Not the way to do it. The question is, if you are an exporter, do you really know who the buyer is as far as the end user? I'm not talking about the consumer, because I would say the highest percentage is going to eventually go to a retailer. The retailer bought the goods and went to either an agent or a broker went in who represents maybe your firm, but usually it's going to be a Chinese firm, a Vietnamese firm, a Bangladesh firm, but not an Indian firm. Why not an Indian firm? If you look at the amount of exports of Indian apparel, none of it goes to the West Coast. If you take New York market, you take Florida market, you take Dallas, Texas market, Chicago, Illinois market for apparel, you add it all up, it's only half of what Southern California does. It's the largest single employer in the state. Over 1.3 million people still are in the apparel business in California, growing, and there's 167 schools throughout the United States at the high-end UCLA, Long Beach State, University of Pennsylvania, all academia into the textile and apparel area. Now the final cut and sewing, still 10% of all apparel is still made in the United States, and of that 10%, 8% is made in Southern California. We have over 10,000 contractors making goods. 58% all the apparel that enters the United States comes through Long Beach and Los Angeles Harbor. Yet the amount of sales representatives from India I could count on my hands who have offices in west of the Mississippi. So all of you are going after the smallest part of the market. If you want to sell direct to retailers, within 20 square miles of downtown Los Angeles, there's 4,000 doors of just 3 firms you could sell. PacSun is one, 1,000 stores. Forever 21, almost 1,000 stores. Now, I look at it the other way, too. I took Zara to China. I took Zara to Mexico. And they understood who they were going to as a retailer. One of the ways to reduce your costs is get to the person who you are really selling. If you buy through an agent, you're only going to be selling the agent. If the agent doesn't like you tomorrow, goodbye, what are you going to do? But yet the label says Ralph Lauren, the label says Liz Claiborne, the label says that you're making. I'll ask you all a question. Since China is so big, name me one designer, one brand that was designed in China and is selling either in the EU or in the United States. Name me one. What? Yeah, one. Out of the billions of dollars that they are OEM manufacturers, OEM. All they do is produce what is given to them to produce. They're starting to get a domestic society that wants a certain amount of fashion. In fact, a lot of things that are made in the United States are exported there because they want that certain styling, so to speak. I saw a young man the other day right here in town wearing a t-shirt that says Quicksilver. which is the surfing in Orange County. 50% of their business is done in France, made in China, designed in the United States. Number four, after production, where are you going to make it and get a competitive cost on time, is finance. And boy, today I think we're all in a very tough, the banks all have money, but they don't want to lend it. It's tough, very tough to expand in our market. But in order to be considered a manufacturer, you have to be able to complete or outsource the 360-degree cycle to be able to buy the raw materials, develop the product, design the product, produce the product, and hope to collect your monies within a reasonable period of time. Not easy. We're in a tough business. So those are the four main parts. The joke used to be, what do you want? Quality, price, or delivery? Pick any two. Today, I'm sorry to say, you have to deliver all three. You have to have the competitive price for your market. You have to be able to deliver on time. And China has lost literally billions of dollars in the last 3 years because they have not delivered on time. Now, they are a communist-run country, so certain things can be supported by government, which would not be in a free society, is where I'm standing. But the minute you're in the apparel business, you're also in the business of politics. And I'm sorry to say, sometimes things make it rough. You're the second largest cotton producers in the world. And somebody decided not to export cotton. And I can tell you there was $1 billion that was going to come into India to buy, did not, because the prices were not competitive, and so they went elsewhere. Not because you desired to do that, somebody else who's never been in a factory in their life decided to do it. We have the same problems in the United States. We have laws in California now that you have to put 1,000 different items on a label, and if you don't, and it has to say these items cause cancer. If you decide not to put it on your label, you have to take a $10 million policy out because people are going with Geiger counters to see if the chemicals are there, and they automatically, if they find it, get $50,000 from the state of California, and the store that is carrying that is fined whatever the fine may be, which is usually no less than $500,000. Not a way to run. More people are leaving California than staying in it because of sometimes too strict of laws. Now it comes down to now where are we changing to? Last night I learned what OGTC is trying to do and doing it very successful on a step-by-step basis. But in our business, there's nothing so permanent as change. What was right last year is wrong this year. It is something that we have to keep in tune with in order to grow. The big thing in the United States today is where the garment is going to be made, what are going to be the ramifications if it says made in Myanmar, which we cannot import to Myanmar, or made in India, or made in other labor compliance, and I teach it at the college, is now become a legal document. I import 4,000 containers a year. Let's say I'm a substantial buyer. If I want to sell any major department store, or I really don't sell retailers, personally I don't, I sell screen printers, enhancers, decorators, all that type of people who enhance the apparel, I have to sign documents that I have all the child labor laws of the country, the child labor laws here in the United States where I am, and if I'm in non-compliant, I can be sued. Personally, that's good. I'd rather be sued. I don't need, Gap went through it. Gap had to pay $1.5 million, and people in front of their Gap stores in downtown New York says child labor was made someplace. And to this day, they're still fighting to come out of lost sales. No retailer wants that in their history. So we all have to comply, and we have to put our workers together to work with dignity. That was last night I was saying I opened up a cement plant in Mexico. $50 million plant, employs 100 people. Whoopee. Open up a 1,200 machine sewing plant here in India, you got probably 1,300 to 1,500 people. Big responsibility, big responsibility. With the modern communication we have today, I think we've lost something, and I used to start my speeches off with 3 words: relationships, relationships, relationships. Today, you're getting orders from whomever. Sometimes you're third party, but you're the one laying out your money to buy the raw materials, to make the product. And all of a sudden, that person who came in and sourced your factory and gave you the okay, they're gone, they're sourcing some other country, and now you're dealing with a young student, possibly, or a young person who's never been in a factory before, telling you by email what to do and what not to do, and stopping your production because they won't decide to go to lunch early and not answer your question, and all of a sudden your costs are rising, and the face-to-face relationships have been taken away by our communication. It should be the opposite way around. Our communication should be able that we could answer questions if we're the buyers, or if you're having issues that the power has gone down, and you keep your buyer and the vendor on the same plane all the time, you're going to have less issues of the word that I don't like to use, but it's called chargebacks. No one wins on them. I have been hired to settle over 1,000 cases, mainly in China, over the years. I've never won one. I've satisfied both the buyer and the seller, but I never really won one. Why? The American looks at it, or the European, but mainly the American that I know of, says I lost profits, I did this, and I did this, and so for a $2 knit shirt, they want to charge back $100. Not fair, not right, didn't have to be. So the usual answer is, I'll take 10 cents off your next order. And the next order comes around, of course, oil prices have gone up and stuff, and so instead of raising it 20 cents, you raise it only 18 cents. And our business hasn't changed. I was talking earlier to a gentleman down below, and I think we all know that you have to have sewing machines in order to make a product, at least in the apparel business. Well, I tell my students, and I'm going to tell you the same thing. I can't stamp my foot here, but the largest selling sewing machine is still the treadle machine, single needle, no electricity. And the biggest joke is the buyers or the sources go into China, and they see the beautiful factories with 7,000 people working, 5,000 people, gorgeous, wrap controlled and understood and everything like else, but the product itself is going to someplace 150 miles by train away, being made in a house to help the people support themselves without control or quality control. That's the truth. That's what goes on. The organization here is that if you treat your people and you give them dignity and you give them a fair wage so that they can have a social being and have health care and have within their own society, not saying that they should be able to build the Empire State Building, but have a good life, you'll find that your quality of your product, the consistency of your product will just grow and grow and grow. And the only way it's going to grow is either you have paid people or you yourself have met the true buyer. So they know that if they can have to pick up the phone and they have an issue, they can pick up the phone and call you, and you'll listen to that issue, and I assure you, you're all intelligent enough and all have enough experience in the business to come up with a proper solution. And that is going to be the key. Can you keep up with what is in demand? Fashion helps us move forward, but consistency of manufacturing is the only way you're going to make money. The word fashion allows you to, because it's new, allows you to maybe make more gross margin. It's the driving of moving us forward. But if you own a factory that has more than 50 machines, what you want is consistency. And consistency is by relationship with your buyer. In order to cut your costs to your buyers, you have to eliminate some of the middlemen and come down to the fact that you are responsible as a vendor, they have responsibility as a buyer, and they don't want to change. Let me tell you, because they feel they've trained you and you've trained them, they don't want to make a change. But when prices jump 30% or people get greedy, they will make changes. And they don't come back. They just move on and they start over again. So to everyone here, India is on the precipice of being a world, which you already are, but that gap of what China is doing to what you is going to get much smaller. You're going to see China going after electric harnessing and all the other assembly type of work. Here you have fantastic people that can be trained. You have power in most places to do it. And now you have to say, well, am I going to go to the buyer or am I going to wait till the buyer comes to me? And those of you who are in sales marketing, you let them know what services you're going to give them. Because they're not stupid. They know that cotton costs so much, or wool costs so much, or silk costs so much, whatever you in. Fabric makes up probably 80% of the cost of a garment. So there's no fooling around. The question is, how much overhead do you have? Are you riding around in a Mercedes when you could be riding around in some other vehicle? And so forth and et cetera. You control your own destiny. You control your own businesses. But if you're looking for consistency, there are, at least in the United States, our textile industry has changed. I met with the head of Macy's, the head of Kohl's, and the head of Bloomingdale's. They all came to my office. And these are not the buyers, these are the presidents. And they wanted to start a Made in USA. But they didn't want to increase their prices. I can buy a t-shirt from Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, China, let's call it $1. In the United States, because our labor is much higher, maybe we have certain technology, but India, my understanding of the machine, what I see in the magazine that I write for here, you're as modern or more modern than the machinery we have in the United States, technology-wise. But still, when we have to pay a minimum of $12 an hour, and that's direct cost, you want to add Social Security and all that, you're closer to $20 an hour for somebody to sit at a sewing machine. How can you be competitive with what the wages of the world are? Sorry to say that we've outsourced, and I don't like to use the word, but it's truth. We outsourced in order to exploit labor at a lower cost. And a lot of importers are still looking strictly for that. But I'll tell you, when a Liz Claiborne or a Donna Karan, and they're producing in India, and they're producing in China, and they're producing, and it's the same style number, they want to make sure that when it hits Macy's department store, that it is of the same fit, the same quality, no matter where it was made in the world. The United States really doesn't look at labels as much anymore in apparel. It did, but now there was a big, because of the economics things, a big made in America, made in USA. And I'm the head of the California Fashion Association. we went to 7 different domestic factories. It was triple the price. Now, if the retailer thought that made in the USA, rather than having a $9.99 t-shirt, that they could sell the same amount of $13.99, they would have made it. Not even close. So that idea went by the wayside. And so I'm trying to say that I'm a hands-on. You have to be hands-on with your buyer directly. And I know the Lee and Funds, and I know the Mass Industries, and I know the W. Connors and stuff. They're all wonderful organizations. And if that's what you gear your business to, that's fine. But if you know it's a private label going for JCPenney, or a private label going for Kmart or Sears or Macy's or whatever it is, I think part of your budget and part of your plan would be, maybe I should have my sister, have my brother who lives in the United States, or go and open up a small office that consistently call on the buyer's needs. Therefore, all of a sudden, you're in direct. True, it costs money, but if it's budgeted, all I can tell you is that there's over 700 Chinese apparel factory offices in the western part of the United States. 700.
Bruce, sorry.
Yep.
Time. We need to wrap up. Yeah.
All right. So
Sorry.
I'll be here through the thing. Any questions you have, I'm here to answer them. Thank you very much.